Widescreen video edition. I have again with us Mark Trueack, and we love to have Mark on, and he has some news to share with us today, and with about a new project. So, Mark, I'll let you take it from here.
Yes, thank you for inviting me, and it's lovely to be here on this beautiful South Australian 28-degree day here, still in the autumn months of Australia. Yes, as probably some of you may or may not know, that Unitopia has been put to sleep, and with much sadness. Both Sean and I decided that it was time to spread our wings. We're still pretty much good friends. We own the building where the studio is, so together, and so we've certainly. I wanted to make sure that everybody out there that loves the Unitopia sound is still going to live on through a new project which is called the United Progressive Fraternity, and this will officially be launched from tomorrow. So by the time this goes to air, I would have thought that this will be well and truly entrenched. Why the United Progressive Fraternity? Well, about 3 years ago, while working on the DVD of One Night in Europe and also working on Covered Mirror, I started working on some songs, and these songs were focusing on hope, and I wanted to have a theme behind it where the songs that I wrote would be focusing on interesting ideas about how man has always lived in hope in so many categories or so many dimensions in our history. Hoping that one day our world will be as one. I think we all would like to believe that, but in the real world, unfortunately, this won't happen. But if we can make a difference, perhaps it's one of the reasons why I wanted to write songs about that. I wrote a song also called The Water, which was really about how parts of our world is engulfed with water and parts of our world is completely desertless and so forth. So it's a very important thing to understand that in the real world we have the opportunity and the know-how on how we can actually use our technology to channel flooding areas into drought areas, and that was the concept behind it. And I started working with a good friend of mine up in Sydney called Stephen Layton, and he had just finished doing survival and other stories with John Anderson from Yes, and he thought it might not be a bad idea to bring us both together, because he likes my voice and he certainly loved John's, and he thought that it would be a really nice fit. So there were many incarnations of this song with Stephen, and we have done two versions of the song, one for UPF and one for the UPF Hope album. And the Hope album version is totally different to the version that's going to appear on the new album, which will be released later in the year, called Fall in Love with the World. So that's virtually a bit of an intro on how the whole thing started with the United Progressive Fraternity.
Right. So this began in July of 2011. I read, and is that when you started? This wasn't called UPF then, though, correct? You were just working on some new things.
No. The United Progressive Fraternity was always going to happen, with or without Unitopia. You know, even to the stage, as people will see on the website, the album cover was designed by Ed Unitsky and was ready to um, was really going into the first phase. All the music for The Hope is actually finished. The artists and the instruments that will be laid down is not. So therefore, have an album ready to work on as soon as Fall in Love with the World is finished. And why Fall in Love with the World had leapfrogged The Hope was because I'd already laid vocals down for this very early in the piece with Sean. There are two segments of what Sean and I were writing for the now defunct Turn Left, Turn Right album. We decided that we wanted to still do these songs, but both Sean and I wanted to do them differently. So that's what made it. Sean wanted to have a heavier type band. He wanted something like Dream Theater. He wanted to do something along those lines, whereas I wanted to continue along the same path, but trying to not be focused on edgier situations. So it was very, very important to understand that that both of us had our own ideas for the song. So we split the songs in half, and he took half, I took half, and it was going to be an interesting process in bringing together other musicians, and those musicians would be involved in also rearranging and changing the direction of the song based on ideas that I had and ideas that they had. So mixing everything in a mixing bowl, basically.
So that's a good segue to the other musicians. So I know the other musicians that make up the band that aren't considered special guests, and those are, for our viewing audience, Guy Manning, who you've never worked with before, as far as I know, and then the rest. Let's see. So Matt Williams, David Hopgood, Ian Ritchie. Is it Tim Eargang?
Tim Eargang, yeah.
Eargang, yeah, and then Steve. So of course you worked with them before, and Steve Gee, you have not worked with before.
Yeah.
So how did Guy and you meet when you and I met at Summer's End a couple years back? Is that the first?
Yeah, we met in 2010, but Guy had actually made contact before that. Had been buying Unitopia albums and became a fan, and we became friends along that path before. And of course, when he came up to us at the Summer's End, he came to see us because he was quite excited. And of course, he is I suppose, a very important part of Summer's End in so many ways, because he's appeared there, you know, whether it be with a Tangent or whether it be as Manning. He's a lover of good progressive music, and yeah, he was very excited to catch up with us.
And then, so Steve Gee, how did that come together?
Well, originally we had John Jowett, and by the way, John Jowett will appear on the Hope album, so he's not out of the picture, but John had some personal issues and he had to pull out very late, and we had some couple of choices, and Guy thought that Steve was a pretty good choice in reference to his immaculate playing and also his temperament and so forth. So we thought, well, this is a guy that we got to use. He's going to be fantastic. So he can sing, he can play guitar, he can play bass. He's got the best of both worlds. So that's all good.
And you have quite a list of special guests and some pretty well-known ones. You mentioned John Anderson already, and I know of at least two others. Would you want to fill in some blanks there on the special guests and how they'll be used?
Well, I approached Steve Hackett for the Hope album, and Steve came back to me and said, look, you know, he's been so busy making albums and touring. He said, look, I will fully endorse the album. It's all pending on time. And that was about 2 years ago. And then, of course, Guy's got a strong association with Steve as well, because through just a bit of a joke, Steve started buying Guy's albums through some sort of little, I suppose, inner joke between the two of them. And every time I see there's a new album release, there's also a photograph of Steve Hackett holding up the new album, which is quite funny. And so Steve, I asked Guy to contact Steve, and Steve was very open to do it and laying down some guitar sometime in July, which is what he's going to do. So when we get to the final stages of the album, we'll leave the sections for him to play on, and he will play on that album, on the Fall in Love album. So that's pretty cool. Mary Catherine is a Christian singer. Not making that as a forefront of what she's about. Her voice is very angelic, very similar to Enya. She is very heavily influenced by Enya, and there's going to be some choir parts which will also include my two daughters, Brittany and Holly Trueack, will be involved in doing some of those vocal arrangements. And the other chap who I'm a very big fan of, as an all-rounder, he plays guitar, he plays electric violin, he plays drums, he can play virtually anything, and he sings. I invited him to come and play some flute and also some violin on a couple of tracks, and it sounds awesome. And so he's also another special guest. And because this is really going to be a sort of a three-part album set, where Fall in Love with the World, The Hope, and then whatever the third project will be, will incorporate lots of these really fantastic musicians, unknown and known. And it's the best of both worlds. There's so many fantastic artists out there that need to be in the forefront, and they deserve to be accredited. There's no doubt about it.
And if I could ask you about, because Hasse Froberg has been on the show, actually, and we have a lot of Flower Kings fans. Will he be in one song, or how does I see him in the list?
Well, he's going to be, I've invited him, I've got him on a track which will be on the Hope album. So the Hope album you'll hear more about probably more next year when we start getting stuck into it. But the Fall in Love with the album, Fall in Love with the World album is what you see right there and then. So this is the first phase of where we're going, and of course we're going to tour, and we're going to tour as a promotional tour in areas of that we believe, well, we've not been to before, and I think it's a small tour. It is a very difficult time because there's a lot of progressive rock bands touring at the same time, so we've got to find the right spots to fill the void where some of these artists are not going, and where we can go, where we can draw a crowd, so to obviously spread the word. But look, even with I've been taken back by the amount of people that have actually come on in such a short space of time on Facebook. A little over 3,000 is quite significant in what 4 or 5 weeks before we've even launched. I'm quite impressed.
And so we will. You mentioned the tour. We'll talk about the one spot that you have announced already, which is the aforementioned Summer's End. So, who will it be? The whole band on stage that we mentioned, as far as Guy and your Australian contingency and Guy?
Seven of us on stage. Yes, there is. We've still yet to decide. It's all about finance, of course. If it is all possible, I'll bring the girls with me as well. So that will all depend on, as I said, finance, if that's the case. and we get what we need, well, then we'll definitely look at we'll certainly look at the whole thing and see where we go. I think that will be a real buzz for me to play with my daughters, that's for sure.
And so the band is called United Progressive Fraternity. It's not just a name, it's also, it explains a little bit about how the band will function. And you want to talk a little bit about how the band is a fraternity?
Yeah, I mean, it's a fraternity of musicians. It's a fraternity for the people, meaning that we want the people to contribute, you know, their thoughts and their feelings about the music, perhaps what they would like to hear, perhaps what they can contribute towards it. The musicians, you know, it may be Matt Williams playing guitar on this album, but he might decide for the next album that he doesn't want to do it. We might have a new guitarist in there and so forth. It will be a revolving door, and the beauty of it is the idea from my thought process was to work with as many people as I can. You know, we get one life, as we all know, and it's great to work and great to explore new opportunities, because obviously with different musicians you're playing, the sound changes, and as the sound change, I mean, with Sean, you knew what you were going to get with Unitopia. You knew you were going to get a very big, large orchestra sound. This is not going to have that sound. It's going to be edgier. It's going to have some interesting concepts, still dabbling in, you know, the different cultures around the world. I'm a great believer of hearing different types of instrumentation, and we'll still always have that, because that's been a passion of mine, having that scenario. So so yeah, that the fraternity, you know, and being united as one is always been, so that's similar to Unitopia, always trying to bring us everybody together. But this is a little bit more, or it has a much stronger presence in that area, where the functionality will be based on people wanting to be a part of it on a global scale. And, you know, the feedback I'm getting from friends wanting to put their hands up and say, we'll help promote in our country and be a part of it, is very, very important. It was exactly what I wanted to do with Unitopia, but this already has started to take shape. You know, believing there's almost 30 odd people around the globe wanting to put their hand up and say, hey, I want to help with this. I love your sound, blah, blah, blah. I'm excited about the new project, blah, blah, blah. So it's certainly going to help us big time. There's no doubt about it. The flexibility will be so much better.
So you've had a long history of helping people and concerns. I think the first song was it 321 hours? I'm not quite sure how many hours it was.
Yeah, well, that was something that I initiated by myself. That happened. I mean, actually, the first thing that Sean and I did to contribute towards helping people was writing a song, which I wrote in Bali, by the way, which was called There's a Place. And Sean was wanting a jingle for the Cancer Foundation of Australia. And he said, you know, if you could write some nice words, come up with an idea. And so I came up with a melody idea and I wrote that. And now at that time, this was during the time when Sean was with his second wife, Nelsa, and I was in Bali, and he sent me a message to say, oh, look, you need to come back if you want to sing this, because they want the jingle now. And I go, okay. So I said, look, get Nelsa to sing it. And he, oh, okay, so get Nelsa to sing. So yeah, so Nelsa sang it. So we sent it off, and that song did really, really well as far as the jingle was concerned, and, you know, got a lot of TV airplay. And certainly got the message across. And then I went in the studio and actually came in and sang my bits, and it became almost like Don't Give Up with Kate Bush and thing. So that was the final thing, and that was what ended up. Though that song didn't end up on an album as such. It was a single, and we even did a dance mix version of it as well. So those will come out in the Dream box set with Unitopia in the near future. But then 321 came up, and that all happened when I was writing a song called Trapped. And it was just coincidental that whilst the unfolding of the Beaconsfield mining disaster happened, it sort of clicked to me that this is almost the same thing, but more focusing on two guys stuck inside a cage under the ground. Double meaning in saying that the idea that I had for Trapped was trapped inside your own world, blah, blah, blah. So I decided to write this, and then I contacted them, and then the rest is history, and it became probably the door opener for us in so many ways, because we appeared on 60 Minutes, which was obviously equivalent to the US version, documentary type news show, and yeah, so it was a pretty good humbling experience, and I'm still friends with the guys as we speak today.
So, back to the differences of this new band. We talked that the fans are going to be able to take maybe some sort of ownership in the band, have some feedback, and it was the band is going to be so fluid enough to be able to maybe roll with the today's social media. You want to talk about that a bit?
Well, just when allowing the listener they would hear the songs that we write, and what you hear in whether it's on your website or Facebook or wherever it may be, and someone makes a comment and you say, well, gee, that's a good idea. Why didn't we do that? And so it got me thinking that, the fraternity idea, to be a member of a fraternity, is obviously contributing ideas and thoughts. Perhaps you could write a song about, why there are so many religions, or whatever that may be. And so this is why it leaves it all open, that if we can have a sort of this, the United progressive meaning progressive music, progressive fusion, progressive rock, art rock, whatever you want to call it, and the fraternity meaning that really our fans, our friends, people that are discovering the sound, they could come up with some ideas. They could have we could have like an open forum to saying, hey, if you did this, that would sound good. Now, not every single thing that we see and do is going to come into fruition, but the idea of having that is to pick up on thoughts and process, because everybody wants to hear something different. So if we can take a bit of this and a bit of that and mix it in the bowl, we might have something special. So this idea of doing that in the future for future projects, I mean, if we've got the hope and then we've got fall in love with the world, the third project could be made up, and we might call that album The Fraternity. And basically that becomes the contributions of people from around the globe who have maybe given some form of input, not necessarily musically, but more so in conceptual ideas.
Right, right.
I think that to sort of summarise, I think what we would like everybody to do is that if you've got a lot of friends out there that don't know about this, get them to come into the guest book on the website, which is www.unitedprogressivefraternity.com, or go to Facebook, and that will lead you directly to it. And official launch of Band and Brand is tomorrow, which is the 31st of March, and if I think that would certainly start opening the doors. Now, the new album will be launched at the summer's end, so the first track is The Water, is on the website and can be reviewed there, and you can perhaps leave your comments and sort of tell us what you think. And I think that's probably the way we should sort of end it, you know, sort of finalise where we're at. And I think, you know, the feedback from all of you out there will be very important to us, because we want to give you lots of pleasure in our music.
Great. All right. Well, thank you very much. We're going to have the URL at all times on the screen for people, and links in the show notes here, so that you can see what's the latest news. The pages to look out for that will be changing will be probably the tour page. You'll be adding dates to that, I believe.
We'll be doing that on a weekly basis, so you'll see where we are.
Okay, Mark, I'm going to let you go. I want to thank you so much for your time and being such a friend to the show. And we look forward to getting out to Summer's End. I can't say I'll be there for sure, but we're going to try.
All right, well, that's fine. No worries at all. Well, thank you, and thank you all out there, and we look forward to seeing you at some part of the world somewhere.